In March 2015, the quiet of a San Francisco Bay Area home in California was broken by someone who broke in during the night. It would take months, another scary break-in, and the work of a private detective to find out the truth and catch the man who did it. Denise Huskins was born and grew up in California. She went to college because she wanted to help people, and she ended up getting a degree in physical therapy. After finishing school at Long Island University, Denise first got her physical therapy license in Massachusetts. Then her job brought her back to California, where she got her license there in October 2013. While living in Vallejo, California, Denise met Aaron Quinn, who was also a physical therapist. They first met because they both did the same job, and they really cared about helping their patients. Aaron was still getting over a tough breakup with a girl he was going to marry. Even though it was hard, they started dating, but sometimes things were good and sometimes things were difficult. On March 23, 2015, someone broke into Aaron's San Francisco Bay Area home where he was staying with Denise. Early in the morning, Denise was grabbed, forced into the trunk of the bad guy's car, and taken away. Aaron woke up to find messages from the kidnapper, asking for money to bring Denise back and warning him not to call the police. The threats sounded scary and mean, making Aaron worried that if he was being watched, the kidnapper would know if he called for help. Not knowing what to do, he called his older brother, who was an FBI agent, hoping he could help. His brother's advice was quick and clear. Call 911 right away. Following those instructions, Aaron called for help. By the time the police got to his home, about 9 hours had gone by since Denise was taken. Instead of just focusing on finding Denise, the police quickly started asking Aaron questions like he might have done something to her. At the scene, the police asked him if he had been using drugs. He told them that the intruder had given him drugs, which made it hard for him to respond faster. The fact that he waited so long to call the police became something they didn't trust, with the investigators asking him again and again why he had waited several hours before reporting it. Aaron agreed to go with police to the station, where he told them everything that happened that night. 2 days after she was taken, Denise's time being held captive ended when the attacker drove her about 500 miles away and let her go near her family's home in Huntington Beach. She was really scared and upset, and she told the police that she had been sexually assaulted while she was kidnapped and that the attack had been recorded on camera. What she told them was detailed and really disturbing, showing how serious the crime was that she went through. Even with all this, the way she was let go and the details around it made the Vallejo police suspicious. Making things worse was information from Aaron's ex-fiancée, who told the police that Aaron had talked about maybe getting back together with her while he was still dating Denise. These claims, along with the weird way things happened, made police doubt the couple's story even more. The case took a big turn when Vallejo police held a public news conference. Instead of believing Denise's story, they accused her and Aaron of faking the kidnapping as a big trick. They said that the whole thing had wasted a lot of police time and resources, and demanded that the couple say sorry to everyone. In Dublin, California, about 40 miles from Vallejo, another scary thing happened on June 5, 2015. In the middle of the night, a couple was woken up by an intruder shining a bright light right in their faces. Moving fast, the woman ran into the bathroom to call 911 while her husband fought with the attacker. The fight was intense, but the intruder got away from the home. But when he ran away, he left behind really important evidence, including a cell phone, zip ties, duct tape, and a glove. These were items that would later help solve a bigger mystery. By this time, Denise and Aaron had dealt with months of people not believing them and police saying they lied. Determined to prove they were telling the truth, they hired a private investigator who became really important in solving the case. This investigator carefully looked at the evidence from the Dublin break-in, starting with the cell phone that was left behind. By checking who the phone was registered to, she found out it was connected to the stepfather of a man named Matthew Mueller. The search didn't stop there. Reaching out to other police departments in the Bay Area, the detective learned that Mueller had been a suspect before in a 2009 home invasion robbery in Palo Alto, California. The way he had committed crimes before looked a lot like what happened to Denise, which made them investigate more. The pieces started to fit together in a way that showed the Vallejo police's earlier claims that the kidnapping was fake were totally wrong. As the police kept looking at evidence from the Dublin case, they found something that got the FBI's attention. A pair of swimming goggles with the lenses blacked out using duct tape and a piece of blonde hair stuck to them. This detail was really important, suggesting it was connected to the Vallejo kidnapping. The police told the federal investigators about this, saying that Mueller could be the person who kidnapped Denise. On June 8, 2015, Dublin police arrested Matthew Mueller because of the local home invasion. Catching him was a big moment, though everyone didn't know yet about all the crimes he had done. Matthew Daniel Mueller was born on March 27, 1977 in California and grew up in the suburbs of Sacramento. He grew up with his younger brother, Kent. Their family went through a big change when his parents got divorced during his senior year of high school after his dad had an affair with someone else. As a kid and teenager, Mueller was shy and got bullied because of his weight, but he was known for standing up for other people, often fighting for kids who were picked on. He was involved in school activities, playing trumpet in the high school band, being in the computer club, and doing really well in school with good grades and hard classes. He was also really good at languages, learning to speak English, Spanish, Russian, and German fluently. Mueller graduated from Bella Vista High School in 1995 and right away joined the United States Marine Corps. He wanted to get in better shape and also pay for college later. He served 4 years in the Marines playing trumpet in the United States Marine Band and traveling to different countries including Australia, Abu Dhabi, and the United Arab Emirates. His time in the military included working with the 3rd Marine Aircraft Wing at Marine Corps Air Station El Toro, and he was part of Operation Pacific Haven. While he was stationed in Okinawa, Japan, he started a nonprofit organization to teach local people about the internet and helped with a newspaper that was in 2 languages. In 1999, Mueller was sent to the Middle East, where he earned 3 service medals and was promoted to sergeant. These achievements showed he was a decorated Marine. Even though he did well, he started having really bad mental health problems, which he said was Gulf War syndrome, even though he had never been in direct combat. These problems led him to ask for and get an honorable discharge from the Marines, ending his military career. After leaving the military, Mueller went to community college before transferring to Pomona College. There he did really well in school, graduating summa cum laude in 2003. He studied 2 majors in economics and science, technology, and society within the public policy analysis program. His final big paper was about immigration policy, showing he was getting more interested in law and government. That same year, Mueller went to Harvard Law School, where he got really involved in helping people and public service. He volunteered at the Harvard Legal Aid Bureau, helping immigrants and poor people affected by domestic violence. His commitment to these causes was clear in the work he chose to do, often helping vulnerable people who needed legal help and support. Mueller got his law degree from Harvard in 2006, and his connection to the school went beyond just graduating. He stayed there as a fellow and research assistant in the Immigration and Refugee Clinical Program, where he played a big role in running the program. This happened when the director was on sabbatical. The FBI searched Mueller's home, where they found strong evidence connecting him directly to Denise's kidnapping. Among the items they found was Aaron's stolen laptop, a real link that erased any remaining doubts about the couple's story. Finding these items not only connected Mueller to the Dublin attack, but also directly showed he was involved in the big Vallejo kidnapping case. In September 2016, Mueller pleaded guilty in federal court to 1 count of kidnapping, admitting to a bunch of carefully planned actions during Denise's kidnapping. He admitted using pre-recorded audio messages to make it seem like multiple people were involved, using blacked-out swimming goggles, liquid drugs to make people sleepy, and other tools to commit the crime. His plea meant he was formally accepting responsibility for the kidnapping, and he was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison. Beyond the federal conviction, Mueller faced additional state charges including kidnapping, burglary, robbery, and 2 counts of assault by force. However, in November 2020, the state case was delayed when he was found incompetent to stand trial because of mental health concerns. This decision temporarily stopped his prosecution for the sexual assaults and related crimes tied to the Vallejo case. 2 years later in 2022, Mueller was deemed mentally fit to face the charges that were waiting. In court, he entered guilty pleas to the state counts, bringing more legal closure to the crimes he committed against Denise. Mueller continues to serve his federal sentence, staying locked up for the kidnapping conviction that first brought him to justice. While the criminal case against Mueller happened, Denise and Aaron turned their focus toward making the Vallejo Police Department answer for its actions right after the kidnapping. In September 2015, they filed a lawsuit against the city claiming false imprisonment, defamation, false arrest, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The main part of their claim was that the police had destroyed their reputations through an outrageous, completely unprofessional, and totally unfounded claim that hurt their names. The damage to Denise's reputation was really bad. In 2017, she publicly talked about the harassment she dealt with after Vallejo police accused her of making up the kidnapping. She talked about getting lots of messages on social media that were not only mean but also really upsetting, adding to the trauma she had already experienced from the crime itself. In 2018, after years of legal fighting, the city of Vallejo agreed to settle the lawsuit. Denise and Aaron reportedly received $2.5 million, an agreement that gave them some acknowledgement for the harm they suffered. While the settlement couldn't undo what happened in March 2015, it stood as both proof that their stories were true and a formal recognition of the damage caused by the false accusations that had followed them after the kidnapping. In 2025, 10 years after their nightmare started, Denise and Aaron are now working with police and using their traumatic experience to help change the way officers are trained to question suspects. Denise said, "It is terrifying to me to think of how many victims there might still be out there that are living in fear and wondering if they are going to be attacked again, and that their attackers are still out there." Working with Denise and Aaron, and using science-based interviewing, Nick Borges, a police chief in Seaside, California, and El Dorado County District Attorney Vern Pearson, got Mueller to confess to even more crimes that became cold cases from behind bars. Mueller's timeline of confessed crimes dates back to August 1993 when he was just 16 years old. There was an alleged kidnapping and sexual assault that happened then. He allegedly planted hidden cameras in bathrooms, used peepholes, videoed neighbors through windows, and entered apartments while women were in the shower. During his time at Harvard, he committed 2 crimes: assault and attempted sexual assault twice in just a few weeks in 2009. Mueller was called the Mare Island Creeper by his victims. In 2025, charges were filed against Mueller for a kidnapping for ransom in the San Ramon area in 2015 that had never been reported before. That home invasion allegedly happened 2 weeks after Mueller let Denise go, but the district attorney's office said it was so traumatic the family never reported it, fearing he or other attackers would come back. Denise said, "I believe that this is just the tip of the iceberg." A decade after their American nightmare, Denise and Aaron are back in front of the media. But this time, they have law enforcement on their side. In November 1987, inside the crawl space of a Nashville, Tennessee home, something really horrible was found. Skeletal remains buried under the dirt floor. Even though the person who did it admitted it, the victims stayed nameless for decades. On Tuesday, November 17, 1987, a person renting a home at 3509 Charlotte Avenue in Nashville, Tennessee, made a scary discovery. While looking at the dirt floor under the crawl space, he found human remains buried beneath the dirt. Shocked and scared, the tenant immediately called the police. The officers came right away and started digging up the area. What they dug up weren't just bones, but the skeletal remains of 2 women. A police detective said at the scene, "I am very confident now that we have 2 victims. We have 2 skeletal remains, and there is no other bodies or body parts or evidence we need to seek out." Shortly after the horrible discovery, the investigators focused on a man named James Schaffer, a former tenant of the same house. At the time, Schaffer was already in jail in Kentucky, serving time for the kidnapping and assault of a 14-year-old boy. During the investigation, he confessed to killing the 2 women. According to what he said, he had killed the 2 women in 1985, claiming he did it in a moment of rage. He said that the women were prostitutes he only knew as Sheila and Little Bit, and that the deadly encounter happened when he caught them trying to steal from him. Even though Schaffer confessed, the police faced a big problem. The identities of the 2 women stayed unknown. The remains were just skeletons, and in 1987, forensic technology was limited. There was no way to use fingerprints or DNA to figure out who they were. Without names, the investigation hit a wall. For all the work put into the case, it eventually went cold. There were no leads, no new witnesses, and no tools available to solve the mystery of who these women were. Detective Matt Filter of the Metro Nashville Police Department later explained the difficulty the investigators faced. He said the 2 women were never identified back in 1987 because they were skeletal remains. One of the victims, called Sheila Jane Doe, was described as a black or African American biological female between the ages of 20 and 40, standing about 58 to 510 tall. She had black hair, and both her fingernails and toenails were painted red and yellow. She was found wearing a gold braided ring with an amber stone and an Elgin gold watch. Based on how decomposed the body was, the investigators guessed the year of death as 1985. With limited forensic resources and no more information, the case stayed unsolved for almost 4 decades. The unidentified women were buried without their names, their stories left incomplete. Meanwhile, their families, not knowing what had happened, likely kept searching or waiting, not knowing the fate that had happened to them. In January 2025, Metro Nashville's Cold Case Unit decided to reopen the decades-old file. This time armed with a powerful new tool, forensic genetic genealogy. The plan was to dig up the unidentified remains buried back in 1987 and get DNA for advanced analysis. Just 2 days before the scheduled digging up, an unexpected call changed everything. Detective Filter said, "I got a phone call from a woman who said she had been looking for her mother since the 1980s, since about 1984. Her voice brought a new lead that no forensic technology could have predicted. Acting quickly, the investigators collected a DNA sample from the woman and sent it for comparison against the remains they already had. In July 2025, soon after the DNA was analyzed, the results confirmed the match. One of the Jane Does was Sheila Cummings from Elgin, Illinois. She had been just 23 years old when her life was taken in 1985. Sheila's daughter, only a child at the time, grew up haunted by the question of what happened to her mother. But even as the years went by, no one imagined Sheila's story was way more tragic, and that, without anyone knowing, she had already been found. After all those years of not knowing and pain, her daughter finally got the answer she had been searching for since she was a kid. An officer said, "It is a great feeling to know after 40 years, you are able to finally identify somebody and return them to their family." The identification wouldn't have been possible without the daughter's phone call or the advances in forensic science that made DNA matching through distant relatives a reality. Detective Filter explained how important the technology was. With forensic genetic genealogy, we can now take a DNA sample, upload it to a database, and see how it matches with other people, even distant relatives. It is this very advancement that brought closure to Sheila's family and brought back hope that the second unidentified woman with the nickname Little Bit could also be named. She was a 20 to 40-year-old black female who stood at 57 and had an open-faced gold overlay on her right lateral incisor. She was also found wearing a copper Grim Reaper ring. Anyone with information about her is asked to call Crime Stoppers at 615-7-4270-463, the MNPD Cold Case Unit at 615-862-7329, or the Davidson County Medical Examiner's Office at 615-7-43-1800. Although the work is far from over, the success in identifying Sheila has brought new life into the investigation and renewed the commitment of the detectives involved. In March 1977, a woman left Sealy, Texas with her husband and young son for what was supposed to be a healing trip to Georgia. This is the story of a mother lost in silence, a child stolen too soon, and investigators who never gave up. On December 10, 1980, hunters walking through a wooded area west of Highway 231 near Fountain, Florida, discovered the skeletal remains of an unknown woman. The condition of the clothing found with the body raised immediate suspicions. Damage to the fabric suggested that something bad had happened. With little to go on, the investigators worked to figure out who the remains belonged to and whether they could be linked to any ongoing or cold cases in the area. At first, the police believed that the remains could belong to Joanne Benner, a 21-year-old mother of two who had disappeared in 1976 under mysterious circumstances. At the time, Joanne's unsolved disappearance was still an open case, and the timeline and location of the remains seemed to match her story. However, as forensic experts looked at the remains more closely, a different truth started to come out. After a thorough examination, it was determined that the remains did not belong to Joanne. This discovery left the investigators without a clear path forward, and the unidentified woman's case eventually went cold. It would take almost 45 years before the truth would finally start to come out. In 2025, improvements in modern technology allowed the Bay County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit to reopen the case and look at the unidentified remains again. The investigators sent a tooth to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. From that single tooth, a DNA profile was created. Once the DNA profile was created, it was entered into the combined DNA index system. It didn't take long after the profile was uploaded for the investigators to get a match. In June 2025, that match led directly to Carol Sue Skidmore. Her identification was officially confirmed through DNA comparisons with surviving family members in Texas. Specifically, the samples matched her brother and another sibling, finally linking the remains found in Florida to the mother who had disappeared back in 1977. Carol spent her early years in Texas, where she eventually became a mother to a young son named Lindale Matthew. By the spring of 1977, 26-year-old Carol's life was facing serious challenges, especially within her marriage to James Ronald Skidmore. Hoping to fix their broken relationship, the couple, along with their 5-year-old son, left their home in Sealy, Texas on March 29 for what was meant to be a healing visit to James' parents in Rossville, Georgia. Carol last made contact with her family on April 9th, telling them she wasn't sure when they would return. It would be the last time her family would ever hear from her. Weeks later in May, tragedy struck when young Lynn's body was discovered in Parksville Lake, Tennessee, wrapped in plastic and underwater. Then on June 1st, James Skidmore was found dead in an Arkansas motel room, the victim of a drug overdose, leaving behind a mysterious note stating, "Things were not working out for him," and no sign of Carol. The investigators would eventually come to the sad conclusion that James was responsible for the death of both his wife, Carol, and their young son, Lynn. They believed that after doing these acts, James took his own life. However, with Carol still missing and no solid evidence tying all the pieces together, the case stayed shrouded in mystery for decades. After years of painful not knowing, Carol's family finally had confirmation of what had happened to her. For For her brother, who had waited almost half a century for answers, the discovery brought both closure and deep gratitude. Thanks to determined investigators and evolving science, Carol is no longer a missing person. She is known, remembered, and finally laid to rest.